Posting a wrap up for 1 month after not posting one for the previous month is just my brand. I can't help it. Reunited and it feels so good. Hi, hey, I'm Morgan, and today I'm going to be bringing you my April wrap up. The month of April was weird, both in like personal happenstance as well as reading. So I took part in the OWL's readathon. I have 2 vlogs for that up on my channel already. I'm currently working on the 3rd and final one. Just sometimes I'm editing a vlog and the only thing I can think of is,
God, this bitch really doesn't shut up.
It's me, I'm that bitch. So I'm going to bring you my wrap up to kind of break up those vlogs, because I'm sure seeing 45 minutes of my face every week isn't what everybody wants. I doubt it's what anybody wants, except maybe Ian? Question mark? Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up, so thank goodness. So I'm just gonna tell you about all the books that I read in the past month while I was self-isolating, because I had 45 days paid off from work. Bless up. So I was just reading every single day, and I haven't read anything since because Animal Crossing. So I'm gonna pull out my bullet journal and tell you the stats that I have for the month. You can see my super like in the moment thoughts about all of these books during my OWL's vlog. So if you want to see like my reaction while something was happening in the book, highly recommend you go watch those. But like I said, not everybody wants to watch 45 minutes of me. So in the month of April, I read 9 books. It was gonna be 10, but I DNF'd one. And that amounted to a total of 3,250 pages. Holy shit. And taking that number and dividing it by the 30 days in April, it averages out to 108 pages per day, which is really cool because there were some days I didn't read shit. Like there's some 0 days and it still averaged out to being 108 pages per day. Wacky, I know. 2 of these books were listened to on audio. One of them was read as like an e-book, technically a web comic because it's a graphic novel. I'll get into that when I get into it. And the remaining 6 were physically read. And I had an average rating of 3.8 stars. So I had some great reads, some ones that I really enjoyed, and some fucking duds. In typical MorgyyReads fashion, I'm going to be doing little mini reviews for each of these, going from my lowest rated, working my way up to the highest rated. So let's just get on into it. Why am I like this? Am I more than you bargained for yet? Why do you subscribe to me? 'Cause I'm obnoxious in every video I post. So the first book I'm going to be talking about is unfortunately the one that I DNF'd this month, and that is Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero. I have attempted to read this book like 4 times, I want to say. I sprayed the edges of this because I was really excited about it. The premise is like Stranger Things meets Scooby-Doo energy, and I was just like super jazzed about the whole concept, and every time I've gone to read this, I've never been invested enough to continue past like 50 to 75 pages, and I tried to listen to the audiobook this time, hated the narrator. There's just something about the way that this is written that feels really tedious. It's really slow. I say in one of my vlogs, I listened to like what was it, 40, like it was like almost an hour of the audiobook just to get through 50 pages, and it was just like drawing on, and I just wasn't into that. And I also just think that some of the things said in this are really gross. There's a queer Latinx character in this, and every time like her friends are reunited with her, they continually say like, oh, we thought you were gonna be a boy next time we saw you, and they just make like really snide comments towards her being queer, and just like make transphobic comments as well, and I just didn't vibe really well with it. And I've read further reviews saying that the queer rep continuing throughout this book is also pretty harmful and not great, and I didn't want to continue to try to force myself to read this because the cover's pretty. I'm over that. I'm over giving a book 5 chances because the cover's pretty. I just don't see myself ever picking this back up, and yeah, it's unfortunate because yes, this cover is gorgeous, and I did spray the edges because I was real full of myself thinking that I would like this, and it's quite the opposite actually. I didn't rate it because I don't think rating a book that I only have read 50 pages of is very fair, but I did mark it as DNF on Goodreads. The next book that I'm going to talk about is one that I did force myself to finish, and I hated it, and that is The Merciless 2 by Danielle Vega, aka Danielle Rollins. I rated this 2 stars. I really could not stop laughing at this book. I couldn't take it seriously. I enjoyed the first book way better, and I don't think this sequel was at all necessary. And it's called The Merciless 2, The Exorcism of Sofia Flores is the entire name of it. However, the exorcism, spoiler alert, doesn't come in until the last 30, 40 pages. Like the last 30 to 40 pages were the best of this book, and they still weren't that great to me. I didn't like our main character. I didn't like being in her head. She was super snobby and mean and really rude towards her friends. I was just really upset about this because I wanted it to be better. I always go into YA, horror, thriller, etc. books expecting them to be something that they're not, which is good. I have the remaining 2 books of this series, and I want to finish it and just kind of see what it's like, but this was very underwhelming for me, and I kind of want to do a whole video once I finish all 4 books talking about this series at length, because I felt a lot of different things about it. So this is the sequel to the first book, The Merciless, and we're following Sofia Flores after the events that took place in The Merciless. So she has had a pretty rough go of it since the exorcism turned torture escapades of the first book, and now she has found herself at a Catholic boarding school, because what exorcism book and movie don't take place at a Catholic boarding school? I also can't speak into the Latinx representation of this book. I don't like Spanish speaking being a novelty of a book, and I felt like anytime Sophia conversed with her grandmother, the Spanish was always in italics and was always explained to the reader, and it just was very repetitive, and it felt like I was being spoon-fed diversity as opposed to it just authentically happening throughout this book. And especially after reading another book that I read this month, I just didn't really like it, and I don't think it's on Voices because Danielle Vega's last name is Rollins, and I'm pretty sure she's not Latinx. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But yeah, the only reason I gave this 2 stars and not 1 is because it at least made me laugh. I don't think that was the intention. It didn't scare me. It wasn't spooky. It was just kind of stupid. Oops. The next book I'm going to be talking about, I rated 3.5 stars, just kind of nice and right in the middle. Nothing too bad, nothing too good, and that is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've never read anything by Tolkien, and before I get into my review and my thoughts and opinions, I just want to let it be known that I fully respect what this book and what Tolkien's work did for fantasy as a genre and a concept. I think that Tolkien really transcended what fantasy could be, and that is such an important thing to take note of. I didn't hate this book, but it wasn't my favorite. I think that if I continue reading Lord of the Rings, I will enjoy those better than The Hobbit, but I did not have any ill feeling. I know people see a 3 or 3.5 star review and they think that they're gonna get some spilled tea over some trash shit. No, 3.5 out of 5 is still a really good review. If you want some real tea, The Merciless was trash. This was good. But it was just good, you know? It wasn't the most extraordinary thing I've ever read, but it did pave the way for what fantasy has become, and I respect that so much. This is about a guy, a hobbit, named Bilbo Baggins, and he goes on an adventure, and I feel like that's all that needs to be said. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was sweet and whimsical and really fun. I listened to this on audiobook. Did I put that I listened to this on audiobook? I don't know, maybe. I didn't write that, I listened to this on audiobook. My stats were wrong. I enjoyed the narrator's voices that he did and the way that he told this story. I like siphoned through 4 different audiobooks of this because I wanted to listen to it while I did some other things. And I finally found one that wasn't playing like really loud Irish step dancing music throughout the entire thing. Excuse me, Libby, how come every rendition of The Hobbit has like super blaringly loud bagpipes while I'm trying to listen to the story? I am someone that cannot audibly handle multiple sounds layered on top of each other because of my OCD and the way that my brain works. Don't layer gross bagpipes when I'm just trying to listen to a book. Please and thank you. The one thing that like I want to talk about, I know that food is like a big part of a Hobbit's personality, you know, but I just wish I didn't have to go every chapter hearing about how hungry Bilbo was and how like he should have been back at the Shire like eating second breakfast or whatever. Like I just thought that that was kind of redundant. I think it could have been mentioned a couple of times to get the point across, but I didn't think it needed to be mentioned as much as it was. And I found certain aspects of this kind of forgettable. I don't remember every little thing that happened in this, but also that could be me and my perception of it while I was listening to the audiobook, so I can't really blame the book for that. But it wasn't my favorite thing I read this month, but not the worst thing I read this month. I still enjoyed it, and I plan to continue to read more Tolkien in the future. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is a reread, and that is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And I had this kind of lowly rated. This was originally a 5-star read when I first read it 3-4 years ago. I read this like right when I first started my booktube channel, and I was getting into reading new things, and by new things I mean books that weren't like Harry Potter and the YA, like John Green, like contemporary shit that I had read prior to starting my booktube channel. I was kind of branching out, and I rated this 5 stars when I first read it. And I went back to my Goodreads review, and one of the reasons I rated it 5 stars is because Lila Bard existed, and like wow, my bar was set real low if just the existence of a female character in a fantasy book was like the shit for me. So I gave this 3.75 out of 5 stars. The story is still enjoyable. This features our main character Kell, who's an Antari, which means that in this world where there are 4 different alternate Londons that have differing magic systems, Kell is able to travel between them, and he is one of the only ones in this world that's able to do that. Antari are super rare. The different Londons are Grey London, White London, Red London, and Black London. Black London is said to have been destroyed because of the way that magic was handled there, and Kell finds a token of Black London, and he thinks that it is his responsibility to find Black London again and return it there. And some shit pops off. I've never finished this trilogy, so I wanted to reread this before continuing because like I said, I read this like 3 or 4 years ago, and my views on it were pretty hazy, and I had high expectations going back into this world, but I think my bar was set so low for what books could be, and I've read better fantasy books since this one. Not that it's bad, I think that it's really well fleshed out. I love character-driven stories, and the plot is really great, but I just feel like the characters are kind of one-dimensional. I wish we had gotten more of like what makes the characters tick. I'm a very character-driven bitch. If you've been here before, you like know that. But I hope they get more fleshed out as the series progresses, because this is obviously the first book in a trilogy. But it was still great, and I still really liked it, and I am going to continue the rest of the series and hopefully enjoy it more. It's editing Morgan. Hello. I don't know what I was doing while filming this video. I guess sipping the freshest and finest of dumb bitch juice. I also read Heartstopper by Alice Oseman as a webcomic on Tapas. That's what I mentioned at the beginning of my video, where I was like, I'll get into it, and then I never fucking got into it. I gave it 4 stars. It was really cute. You know, if you want to hear a review of anything by Alice Oseman, just go watch Cat from Paperback Dreams, because she'll do it better than I ever could. Okay, take it away, dumb bitch energy. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is Don't Date Rosa Santos. This is by Nina Moreno, and I gave this 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. This is an ARC copy that I got from a bookseller. I sprayed the pages of this yellow. If you've seen my DIY sprayed edges video, you've seen this. And I really enjoyed this. This was first put on my radar because of Rocky over at Blonde with a Book, and I absolutely adored this. This is about Rosa Santos, and she lives in Port Coral, Florida, and she has been like told that her family is cursed by the sea and they don't go to the sea and things of that nature. And then she meets this boy with a boat and things get shaken up a little bit, and it's such a sweet book. This book made me cry way more than I was like expecting it to. Rosa lives with her grandmother, and her mom is kind of an absentee. She just kind of comes in and out of her life, and they have a very similar dynamic to Lorelai and Rory from Gilmore Girls. This also does say for lovers of Gilmore Girls, so it does have big Rory Lorelai energy with how like Lorelai and like Rosa's mother both try to be like the best friend, but it's kind of flighty, and the daughter's like, I don't want a best friend, I want a mother, you know? I think that that is talked about really well. I think that diving into this family dynamic, Rosa's family is Cuban American. Did I say that? I probably didn't. I'm really sorry. And this is Own Voices representation, and I think that it was written really well. I love that when they spoke Spanish, it was just like a common thing, and that it wasn't like automatically translated for the reader like The Merciless did. I think that it was a really nice way to incorporate like being bilingual without it being spoon-fed like translated, and I thought that that was really well done. I loved this book. I can't wait to read more by Nina Moreno. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is just such a sweet book, and it's so much more than like romance obviously, but there is a little sprinkle of YA romance. And this was just such a sweet YA contemporary to read. It made me want to go to the beach. It made me want to leave my house. And that was fun. It was a fun place to escape to for a little bit. The next book I'm going to be talking about was a reread, and this was also one that I listened to an audiobook, and this was... Hey there, it is Dumb Bitch Editing Morgan again. I read this and then was informed after the fact that Jay Kristoff went on Twitter and called the opinions of Black people asking for more diversity worthless noise. Here's some receipts. So instead of reviewing this book and giving credit to a problematic and horrible person, I'm instead going to put clown music over my clip because I am a literal clown. Sorry. Y'all know. Y'all read the tweets. Next is one that I was so excited to get to. Oh my god. And that is We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. I ended up giving this 4.25 out of 5 stars. I was like yearning for more Grady Hendrix content because I wasn't able to order his new book, but the book loft reopened for curbside pickup and it stopped being on back order, so I got it like a couple days ago and I'm reading it now and I'm really excited. However, last month I was not able to get my hand on Grady Hendrix's new book, and I was like, well, I haven't read this one yet. So this is about a metal band named Dirtwork, and they were just kind of like an indie metal band. They went around, they toured a little bit, but they never got any massive success, and the band inevitably ended up breaking up for unforeseen reasons. And then later down the line, their singer ends up going to be more successful than any of them ever were. This follows the guitarist Chris Pulaski, and she is seeing that this lead singer is like going on another tour and things are looking a little sinister, and she's starting to piece things back together, and she's realizing that she needs to get the band back together and confront him to see what actually happened that night that everything went to hell. And this was so well done. I tabbed this the fuck up, which I love tabs on like black sprayed books. I think it's so cool. The best way I can recommend this book to you is if you really liked Daisy Jones and the Six. and you want a horror version of that, this book. This was so fun. I think I read this in the like entire time of like a day and a half. It was so much fun and I just couldn't stop reading it. It was just devourable. Like every time I went to bed, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to get a full night's sleep and so I can wake up and read tomorrow. And it was just, I hadn't felt that way about a book in a really long time, and Grady Hendrix never fails to write a story that I can just lose myself in for a couple days, and this one was no different. The only thing that I wish was different about this book was the involvement of the character Melanie. We get like a kind of split perspective type of deal where we go back and forth between Chris and Melanie. However, we get way more Chris and we get a couple chapters of Melanie's perspective of what's going on with her, and I would either rather we get a little bit more of her or none of her at all. I think that she didn't lend too much to the story. Like her perspective of things was nice and it was a cool way to break things up, but I think that if it was added earlier and there were more of her chapters, I would have cared more about her and this would have definitely raised the bar. Or if this was a book strictly about Chris's perspective and what she was going through, I would have liked it more. The ending wasn't my particular favorite. I liked how open-ended it was, but I wish it would have answered a couple more questions. Like, you can tie up loose ends in the context of answering all the unanswered questions and also still be an open ending. I don't think it has to be all these loose strings and an open ending, you know what I mean? But that's just my personal opinion. I still really enjoyed this. Grady Hendrix writes horror that doesn't take itself too seriously and lends a little bit of humor, and I really enjoy that, but he still creates these ambiances and these characters that are scary. I think that the scariest thing about this is not about like the soul selling and about the deals that are made. It's about humanity's horror side and about the horrors of the music industry and about how humanity is when it comes to music and things like that. There's scenes of like how women are treated in the music industry and how women are treated at shows and events, and the fans of the singer's like new band and new persona when he performs is very scary. It invokes this raw primal rage in fans, but I still really enjoyed this. I love things that center around music. You never see anything about metal bands. It's very seldom, and that's why I think that this would be a really good thing to read if you like Daisy Jones and the Six, but you want a different kind of energy going into it. I highly recommend this book. I recommend everything by Grady Hendrix, but this one was a win. We're down to the last two, y'all. The next book I'm gonna talk about was a 4.5 out of 5 stars read, and that is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I listened to this on audiobook, and I just gotta say, I love who narrates Angie Thomas's audiobooks. I think her name's Bonnie Turpin. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I could be wrong. Ooh. This book was phenomenal, and I read it during the time that Angie Thomas was announcing the cover and the title for her new book coming out, Concrete Rose. Concrete Roses. This one. And I was so excited to read more Angie Thomas, and I'm so excited for her new book. However, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this one. This follows 16-year-old Bree, and she is an aspiring rapper. Her father, who has passed away, is a like rap legend in her area, and she wants to follow in those footsteps, and she starts taking the steps to become that. But when things get leaked in a way that perceives her in a different light than she wants to be perceived in, it causes a spiral of issues with her, her community, her school, and how she is perceived by the media as well. I think that this tackles wonderfully how Black youth are treated in like low-income areas. This takes place in the same area as The Hate You Give, and the shooting in The Hate You Give is also mentioned in this. Bree is harassed by security guards at her school, and then she is painted to be this thug when her rap songs come out. It lends a lot of the perspective in how the media perceives Black youth when they're outraged about something. Just similar to The Hate You Give, that's kind of how this is painted. It talks a lot about microaggressions that Black people experience by people that are in positions of power over them or the media and things like that, and I think that Angie Thomas writes the anger of these situations so viscerally in her characters, and her characters have the right to be upset, and they are, and they let themselves be angry, and it feels so real and authentic, and Angie Thomas just knows how to write the teen experience and the like black teen experience in the culture that we're in today. And I think that that is such an important story to have, and I just think she writes teenagers and youth so authentically. Her characters feel so real and true, and I absolutely adored this book. I will say I'm very glad that I listened to this on audiobook because I lack melanin, and if I had to like read the raps in this with my voice in my head, I wouldn't have liked it as much, but that's just because of me and because I would be embarrassed of myself. You know what I mean? It just wouldn't have felt right. So the audiobook made the raps feel genuine and make them feel alive, and I really enjoyed that. I loved the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook for The Hate You Give as well. I think I already said that. This book was phenomenal. I love Angie Thomas. I can't wait to read everything that she writes forever. And the final book that I am going to talk about, the only 5-star book that I read this month, but one of my favorite books that I've read this year, is A Fortune for Your Disaster by Hanif Abdurraqib. This is a poetry collection. Hanif Abdurraqib is from Columbus. Love that. He is so cool. I follow him on Instagram and he's just the neatest. I've seen videos of him performing his slam poetry and I just admire his work so exceptionally much, and this poetry collection was gorgeous. It's amazing. It's one of the best poetry collections I've read in an exceptionally long time, especially this year, and I just feel really passionately about this. It talks so much about being black and growing up in Ohio and losing loved ones. It's so beautiful, and the commentary in it is just outstanding. It's so powerful and true and raw, and I like cried throughout the majority of my reading this, and I read it in one sitting because I couldn't put it down, and it was just great. I borrowed this from the library and I haven't been able to take it back yet, so it's almost like I own a copy, but soon I'll buy my own copy of it and annotate it and yell from the mountaintops how much I loved this book, because I love this book so fucking much. But yeah, there you have it. That is my wrap up for the month of April. I would say this was a nice short sweet little wrap up, but I read a fuck ton of books and a fuck ton of pages, so this might be a longer video. Hopefully it's not 45 minutes long like my vlog. If you like this video, you are more than welcome to give it a thumbs up if you feel so inclined. Leave me some comments about what you read in the month of April, what your favorite book of the month was, what your least favorite book of the month was. Did you participate in any readathons? And if you would like to see more of my content and more of my mug, you are more than welcome to subscribe. I try to upload every Monday and Friday. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, my name is Morgan. This is MorgyyReads. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and happy reading. Okay, bye. Hold on, can I like do one of these deals? Oh God.